Hey, it's Fox from Inferno Fox Gaming. So I've tried playing Souls-likes like Dark Souls and Elden Ring before, but they just haven't clicked with me. They haven't really resonated. I've had issues with the rather obtuse storytelling, the clunky battle system, and the horrendous difficulty with these games, which really have kept me from connecting with them. But rather than constantly knocking them in this type of genre, I've asked some of my fellow YouTube content creators to convince me to give these types of games another chance. Many of them will take one aspect that is inherent with Souls-likes and advise what makes them great. If these YouTube content creators here have managed to convince you, let us know as well. Links to these fantastic creators are in the description section. And now let's take it away.
Hello everybody, Scorpio Caesar here from the cesArcade, and I want to thank Inferno Fox Gaming for allowing me to be a part of this collaboration. And today we're talking about the Souls games. That's right, we're talking about Bloodborne, Elden Ring, Dark Souls, Demon Souls, all of those From Software games, Sekiro. What makes them so great? Why should you probably play them? Now, let me ask you, do you like RPGs? Of course you do, everybody loves RPGs. But what makes these similar to RPGs? Well, there's a handful of things I want to talk about real briefly. Starting off with the environments. I mean, just to look at some of the vistas in these games. The worlds are gigantic and beautiful. Some of these are even interconnected. And the great thing about it is if you see some place in the distance, you're probably going to go there at some point in your journey. And just like an RPG, these worlds are huge and vast. And the possibilities are endless. Some may be beautiful, some may be grotesque, but either way, you're going to go through it all in these adventures. Next up, the combat. Try to approach these games like an RPG. Yes, it's not turn-based in a traditional sense, but if you look at the way things go, you wait for your opponent to attack. Once they're done with their animation and attacking, that's when you go in and you strike them down. Very similar to a traditional RPG where everybody takes turns attacking each other. And speaking of the combat, every time you defeat an enemy or a boss, you get experience points. Yes, they're not called experience points, but your blood echoes, your souls, all of that good stuff, that's your experience points. And you don't just magically level up after each battle. No, you have to cash those suckers in. So you better make sure you visit your bonfire or your Ashen Maiden or whatever and level your character up. Trust me, you got all these types of stats, you got magic powers that you can use. You want to make sure you level up your character the way you want to. Just kind of like a job system in a Final Fantasy game. Another similarity? So many NPCs in these worlds. Sure, things are a little bit barren and they're kind of stretched out throughout the adventures, but a lot of them have some interesting things to say. While others are willing to sell you stuff. Yes, you even got blacksmiths selling equipment. And of course, just like any RPG, the equipment system. Some of these items that you wear, you attach to your character, give you buffs, they change your stats. Your weapons, they all have their own stories in them. You look at the descriptions. It's amazing how you could customize your character and their look just with the equipment alone. And the games are really customizable in this sense. Those similarities to RPGs are the reasons why I think you should check out the Souls games, because they are fantastic and very challenging, just like your typical RPG. Anyways, I wish you all a good game and good night.
What's going on, everyone? Thank you so much, Infernal Fox, for having me on. I greatly appreciate you, my dude. So, when he came to me and asked me about doing this collab, I had to talk about the battle system in this game, because Dark Souls has a pretty interesting combat system, and the fact that yes, it is an action RPG, but it has a sort of clunkiness to it, right? Everybody talks about how clunky the game feels, but I feel that there's a reason for that. I feel that there's a purpose for that, and the reason I feel that way is because it basically is as clunky as you want it to be. Let me explain what I mean by that. So when it comes to your builds and your gear, you can make the game feel as smooth or as clunky as you want it to be. right? If you go for a bunch of heavy armor and you're like a big meaty tank, yeah, the game's gonna feel a little clunky. When you go and you do that infamous fat roll that everybody talks about, yeah, it's gonna take forever for you to get up. But if you build your character a different way and then you go with different gear, it can feel a lot smoother and a lot more fluid. That's what I mean when I talk about how the game can feel as clunky as you want it to be. You can either make it super clunky and really ratchet up that challenge factor, or you can just have it down here, right at the chill level. Now, the chill level is basically you still getting knocked in the teeth, right, and losing a couple of them, but it's not as bad as up here, right? So, yeah, that's what I mean whenever I said the battle system is as clunky as you want it to be. It's all up to you and how you choose to spec your character out, which I feel gives you a level of, what's the word I'm looking for? It gives you a level of customizability and choice that not a whole lot of RPGs out there can. The fact that you can literally change up just how hard this game is like that, based off of your leveling decisions and your gear decisions, really cool to me. Thank you so much again, Infernal Fox, for having me on for this collab. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one, my fellow Belmonts.
What's going on, guys? My name's RadBash, and special shout out to Inferno Fox for having me on this collab. And so I'm supposed to convince Inferno that he wants to play Dark Souls and why he should play Dark Souls. So the reason I had to go with was the reason that got me into him, and that was because of the multiplayer aspect of the games. So let's talk about it. Now, Fox, I get it. Dark Souls games are hard. You know, it's no one likes just getting slammed repeatedly. But that said, let me explain to you why I really got into Dark Souls. So a friend of mine was a huge fan of them, and he basically was like, hey, let's sit down and play them. And I was like, man, I'm not feeling it, you know, but we were looking for a good multiplayer game. And I was like, you know what? Okay, let's give it a shot. Now, playing Dark Souls with a friend makes it 1,000 times better because yes, Dark Souls is hard, but you add that extra person, and it gives you just a good enough advantage to where you can get through the game. I've played through almost all the Dark Souls game with the same friend, and I have enjoyed almost all of them. And we're not just talking Dark Souls, we're talking Souls-like, so we're talking Bloodborne, things like that. And I have loved them because of the adventures I've gone on with friends. You know, the whole Legend of Zelda saying it's dangerous to go alone, take this. Take a buddy with you, sit down and play through these games, because I could go on and on about why the Dark Souls games are so good. The From Software Souls-like, Soulsborne games are just beautiful, amazing, the setting, the story, all that. But if I had to pick one reason why you should play it, it's definitely because of the multiplayer aspect, because let's face it, there's not enough good multiplayer games out there, or we're stuck with Call of Duty if we don't play Dark Souls, and I'll take Dark Souls over Warzone any day. So, what do you think, Fox? You gonna give Dark Souls a shot? I'm curious to see what everybody else says and what they'd say to convince you to play it, and if you ever change your mind about Dark Souls, hit me up and we'll play some of that multiplayer. Thanks again for having me on, bro, and stay radical.
Folks, Jay from Cold Nights here. Two of my favorite things in video games are tragedy and thought-provoking storytelling. So when my good friend Fox asked me to contribute to this Soulsborne collab and talk about story, I was all in. Let's get into it. The storytelling in FromSoft's Soulsborne games is done in such a way as it is never let on too much. Glimpses into truth, into the past are offered, but the full story is seldom revealed, and when it is, it will be done through the beautiful art and item descriptions offered in the game. Most of it is there, but finding all of it and truly understanding it is where the true treat lies. I find it both incredible and thrilling that after 180 plus hours in Elden Ring, I'm still learning new things and discovering wonderful theories in the lore videos from talented creators across YouTube. An overarching narrative is important, of course, but I find the most meat in the stories of the characters, how they are presented, how we are made to feel about them, how we identify with them. Let's look at the tragic and curious tale of Father Gascoigne from Bloodborne. Father Gascoigne is an early game boss in Bloodborne. You speak to a little girl behind a barricaded door who says her mother and father went out to join the hunt. She gives you a little music box. You think nothing of the interaction, though it seems sad. Then you meet the good father, who has apparently become one of the fell beasts he hunted. His wife is dead upon a nearby rooftop. It is tragic when you play the music box and he grabs his head and mutters, realizing that the beast before you and the dead woman on the roof are surely the young girl's parents. When hunting monsters, be careful not to become one yourself. Our introduction to Vicar Amelia is the image of her on her knees in her church, gripping a golden locket and praying profusely. She's obviously terrified of what is happening to her, and for good reason. Her screams as her flesh splits during her transformation are nightmare-inducing. The screams continue constantly, unabated throughout the battle with her. Her story is a cautionary one as well, much like Father Gascoigne's. She preached using the blood of the old ones for healing, but in the end could not resist the effects of the very blood, even through her prayers. The strength of this form of storytelling is the fact that you are presented with one incredible encounter, such as a boss fight or a story cutscene, and are left to experience the rest of the story and history through exploration and research. You only face many of these bosses once, but their lore lives on in events in the world, interactions with other characters, and the items associated with them. The difficulty in many of these encounters makes that information and revelations feel so much more rewarding to earn. Thank you for having me on, Fox. And as always, stay creepy and get good.
Hey guys, Nishquik here, and hello to Inferno Fox Gaming. Today, I'm going to convince you to get into the Souls-like, or just From Software genre. I'm going to talk about the difficulty and how to overcome the difficulty and kind of ease your worries a little bit here and there. And I'm going to do that by sharing some anecdotes and also by giving some of my personal advice about which game you should start off with. These stories come from Bloodborne, my first From Software game, and Dark Souls 3, my most recent. So let's go all the way back to Bloodborne. I took many tries to beat the first two bosses, the Cleric Beast and Father Gascoigne. I always heard online, on Reddit, on Twitter, on YouTube, that the third boss of the game, the Blood-Starved Beast, is a skill check, and that scared me. I was like, hey, I really committed to this game. The difficulty is really kind of getting to me, but it's fun. So what do I do? And then I put on my RPG mindset, and I said, hey, I'm seeing patterns in this game. I'm seeing elemental weaknesses. I'm seeing areas in which I can get the upper hand. So how about I see where I can get an upper hand with this really intimidating blood-starved beast? So I researched, I looked online, I asked on the Bloodborne subreddit, and I went into this fight so prepared. And as I was approaching the boss, my hands were sweating on my PlayStation controller. I was just so scared about what I was going to encounter. And I went into the boss and I beat it in the span of less than 20 seconds. And my the whole moral of the story is you will often be fearful of certain bosses. You might be a little nervous and apprehensive, but once you know what you need to do, it'll be a little bit more manageable. But that is the opposite of my next anecdote, where I played the Dark Souls 3 DLC, the expansion pass, and all my friends were telling me that this expansion pass has the hardest boss in the game, and arguably one of the hardest bosses in From Software history. I was about to go up against Dark Eater Midir. It was so intimidating because my strongest hits were slightly just chipping away at the HP bar. It took so many days worth of going back to the game, reloading that checkpoint again and again and again to finally beat this boss. But there were so many things that I learned from it. I learned resilience, how to be a better fighter within the game, to understand the movements, the dodging, the attack patterns. I came out of that fight a different person, honestly, and that sounds crazy because, I mean, it's just a game. It's just a game where I'm fighting dragons, and in this instance, a ginormous dragon. But this boss, like some of the other bosses I fought in so many other From Software games, really taught me that feeling of accomplishment, getting to the end of that boss and you realizing all that it took to get to that point. Very few video games have gotten me to feel that way and given me that sense of accomplishment. And that's what I want you to take away from this story. And here's one quick bit of advice. If you want to get into the Souls series, I highly suggest starting with Elden Ring. If one style of playing isn't working for you, you can completely shift your playstyle into another. Your character is very malleable, and that's where the RPG essence of Elden Ring really shines. And another thing about Elden Ring is you have the access to summons, and summons can really help you in bosses to make them more manageable. I wish you all the best. Good luck in this journey into this new genre and new franchise of games. Have a good time and keep me updated later.
Wow, I'm genuinely impressed by your arguments, guys. I really appreciate your input, and I think I'll give one of the best Souls-likes, Elden Ring, another chance. So here we go. I think we're going to give this another shot here. Okay, so, well, maybe I personally have a long way to go, but hopefully you've been convinced or have had your love renewed for these types of games. Thanks again for watching.